Hello, and thank you for joining Calvary Chapel Rio Grande Valley Pierce Youth Group. Pastor Shaun Gibson is currently going through a series called Kiss Me, a study through salvation, sexuality, and the scripture. Today we'll be in chapter 4 of Song of Solomon.
Okay, buckle in. Here we go. Chapter 4. We are in the honeymoon suite. So tonight is really all about God's plan for excellent sex. So I need 2 volunteers. That's a joke. But I saw a hand over there, which is disturbing. I don't know if you're just really trusting or something else. So we'll just go with trusting. Now we're going to look at God's plan for our sexuality. And I think you're going to be crazy surprised at how amazing our God is, especially when it comes to intimacy and to love. So to set the stage, the wedding has happened. We saw the wedding procession in the last chapter, and so now we're in the honeymoon suite. There is no one in the room except the bride and her beloved. And so with the 2 in the room, it's kind of like we're a fly on the wall. It starts, chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead." So let me explain. First of all, we need to recognize that we are reading a poem, considered one of the most beautiful poems of all ancient literature. But it was written 3,000 years ago. So I may have to interpret a little bit of some of what you've heard. The first thing is he's saying, your hair is like a flock of goats. And that's actually, and this, honestly, this verse is very erotic because he's saying your hair is like a flock of goats. The goats of this area, the goats of Jerusalem, are known for their shiny, curly, long hair. He says your hair is shiny. It is black. But he says, and it's like a flock of goats that are descending down the slopes of Gilead, bounding down the slopes, which means her hair has been let down. And this is something that biblical women did not do. Their hair was always put up and it was always covered. Within biblical times in the ancient Near East, women were not to show their hair. It was considered too provocative. So that he's saying your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the mountains. She's let down her hair. No man has ever seen her hair. Then he says, I'm kind of moving back up this verse. He says, your eyes are doves behind your veil. He's saying your eyes are lovely. They're like dove's eyes. They're big, they're beautiful, they're clear behind your veil. And what we're going to find out is this veil is a sheer veil that's over her head. And as we read through the rest of the chapter, we're going to find out that's all she's wearing. She doesn't have any other clothes on. And so he says, your eyes are beautiful behind your veil. Now, so I want you to consider something. This woman, being in a biblical time, her body has never been seen. Her hair has never been seen by any man. She is now standing with her hair down and naked, all but for this veil, in front of her beloved for the first time. Now, if you remember in chapter 1, she was quite concerned about her look. She says, do not stare at me because I'm swarthy, because I'm dark, for the sun has burned me. My brothers were cruel to me. I have not been able to take care of my own vineyard, my own body. She has plenty of self-concerns. So can you imagine how fragile, how delicate, how crazy this moment is for her? What does he say to her? He says, behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. He says it twice. And in Hebraic poetry, this is an emphatic. So to translate it with the power that it would have been read with, he says, behold how beautiful you are, my love. You are gorgeous. So she can be placed at ease. He's speaking. He'll do actually most of the speaking. And now that he has looked at her hair and he has looked at her eyes, he's going to start traveling. Verse 2, your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from their washing, all of which bear twins, and not one of them has lost its young. Now, gentlemen, you may have heard that, I just said that this is considered one of the most beautiful of ancient poems. I wouldn't start robbing it for pickup lines. Okay, probably wouldn't go, it's like, wow, you're pretty and your teeth are like sheep. And, it's probably not going to work. But let me explain what he's saying. He says, your teeth are like newly shorn ewes. Now, the idea is when you shear a sheep, because the wool is so thick, the dirt stays on the outside. When you shear a sheep, it's very white. So he's saying, your teeth are white, which have come up from their washing. Your teeth are clean, all of which bear twins. Your teeth are symmetrical, and not one of them have lost their young. Your teeth are there. And why is he talking about her teeth? Because she's smiling. She is smiling. Not a little smirk, a big, toothy, ear-to-ear grin. She has this huge smile. And he says, your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like the halves of pomegranates behind your veil. He says your cheeks, the pomegranate, he says your cheeks are round and they're rosy, they're blush. She's blushing. And he says, and your lips are thin. So what he's saying is she can't stop grinning. He's describing her smile, and she is happy. And he is happy. So this is a good thing. And then he moves. He's talked about her eyes and her hair and her smile. And now he says, your neck is like the Tower of David, built upon rows of stones. Upon it hang 1,000 shields, all of them the shields of warriors. What he's saying is that your neck is like a tower. Is that she's not ashamed. She's not cowering. She's not bent over. She's regal. She's unashamed. Her head is up. And all the shields are on it. She's victorious. Do you remember it said in the garden that Adam and Eve were naked and they were unashamed? Well, can I tell you that that is a condition that can exist again, and it does exist. When in the marriage bed, you can be naked and unashamed because it is the plan of God. There is a plan for sex, and it's beautiful, and it's lovely, and it's holy, and it's pure. And it's not what the world is trying to sell. She's not ashamed. She's standing up. Her eyes, her mouth, her hair, her neck, and he keeps moving. He says, and your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. And he says, now there is an awful lot of euphemisms for breasts. And most all of them are disgusting. All right? I think teenage males have probably used every term in the English language as a euphemism for breasts. But this is beautiful. He says, your breasts are like two young fawns. Well, what's a fawn? It's a baby deer. It's a little baby deer. And I have a great pastor, Tom Nelson, when I was just new in the Lord, and when he was teaching this, I love what he had to say about this. He says, why fawns? Why two little baby gazelles? How do you approach a baby deer? Because remember, baby deers, they're like the bottom of the food chain. They're like kind of like nature candy, right? I mean, just everything eats them. So baby deers are timid. They're afraid. They run quickly. So how do you approach them gently? You don't come jumping up, come running in going, yo fawns! They just run away, right? The idea here is that he's being gentle with her. Twins of a gazelle, they're symmetrical, and he says that lay among the lilies. He's talking about her skin. He didn't say they're like two baby deers lying on a bed of gravel. He says on lilies. Her skin. He's talking about the petal-like quality of her skin. He didn't say they're like two baby deer laying in really tall grass. She doesn't have a hairy chest. She doesn't have a rough chest. He says it's like flowers. Your skin is like the petals of flowers. And he says and at this point, he hasn't touched her. He hasn't touched her. It didn't say, and the groom said, Cowabunga! And then did a flying cannonball into the bed. He hasn't touched her. He's talking to her. He's talking to her about what he sees. Do you know why that's important? Because men are very visually aroused, and women are aroused through their ears, through talk. And so he's considering her and letting her know, because she knows it too, that everything he sees is good. And so then he says, Where am I at? He's overwhelmed at this point. He hasn't gotten very far. He's pretty much gotten from her eyes down, and he's got to stop. He's getting overwhelmed. He says, until the day breathes and the shadows flee. Let me translate that. All night long. Until the shadows flee in the morning, until the day breathes, all night long, I will go away to the mountains of myrrh, to the hill of frankincense. What he's saying is that I want to be secluded with you. I want to be with you and you alone all night long. He's not saying, let's do this, there's a game on. He's not saying like, well, let's get the deed done because I'm going to go hang out with my buddies. He's not there for himself. What he's saying is right now is he says, there is no place on the planet that I would rather be than with you all night. No one else, just me, just you, all night. So he's kind of getting overwhelmed by her, just by looking at her. And he says, you are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. And I'm going to give you something amazing tonight. I'm going to give you something that's going to bulletproof your marriage. I'm going to give you something that's crazy key. He says, you are all together beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Is that because she's like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model? No. She's already said that she's been burnt and damaged and she hasn't been able to take care of herself. And the truth is, swimsuit models and movie stars are not flawless either. You know, I was watching some kind of a news program, and they had asked this guy who works in Hollywood, he says, how many of the movie stars, the famous people that we would recognize their name, how many of them have their own basically Photoshop artist? He says, all of them do. He says, all of them have contracts that you cannot take a photo of them and it cannot be released until it first goes through their Photoshop artist, so that all of their flaws can be removed. You see, everybody's got flaws. So is he lying to her? He says, you are without flaw. He's not lying to her. He's doing something that every married person needs to do. He is establishing his standard of beauty. She is his standard of beauty. He's looking at her and he says, there is no flaw in you. She's like, but my smile is crooked. He says, it is perfect. But I have this scar on my leg. He says, and it's the perfect scar. It's perfect where it is. And and I'm not really the kind of he's like, no, you are perfect. There is no flaw in you. And he's not lying to her. There is something this is an idea, but I'm going to explain it to you in a way that we wouldn't have known about even before you were born. In the time that most of you have been alive, we've learned a lot about brain chemistry and brain physiology. And there's something that we've learned, and it's how the brain operates and it's how the brain develops. If you will imagine your brain to be a field of grass with the dew on it in the morning, and you do something, you act, you have a series of thoughts, and you have an event in your life. It's like walking through that field of grass. And you can know that even though you've only walked through the field once, you can see where you've walked. The grass has been bent, the dew has dropped off. Now, if that trail leads to a delightful experience, you'll remember it. In fact, you will be apt to return to that trail. And if you continue to go down that same trail, pretty soon the grass won't be bent, the grass will be gone. There'll be a footpath there. And the more you use it, the more it'll flatten out and it'll smooth out. Eventually it might become a road. Eventually it might become a highway. That's what happens in your brain. When you go through an experience that you find pleasurable, you remember that path and you go down it again. And when you go down it again, the myelin sheath thickens upon the axon of the nerve cells and they develop, and that path gets faster and faster and smoother and smoother. And basically what happens is you start to form an addiction. So I want you to consider something. She's never been seen by anyone else. And if he's been doing it the Bible way, he's not looked upon anyone else. And so what's happening is for the first time, she's going, here's my hair. And here I am. And for the first time, he's going, wow. Because you see, he doesn't have this long line of porn that he's comparing her to. He doesn't have this long line of previous experience, sexual experiences with a bunch of other girls that he's comparing her to. He's just looking at her. And just like Adam did, he's become stupid. He's just like, that's Adam. Adam's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I'm man, and you're a whoa man. Yeah, that's what I'll call you. He's overwhelmed. It's like, God, I love the way you did that. It's like we're like meant to be together. That's brilliant. And so he is looking at her, and he has established her as his standard of beauty. And if he maintains that, he'll become addicted to her. You see, you may have been told a lie from the media that if you get married, that your sex life just kind of degrades and it becomes nothing, and that, eventually all married people is like, oh, pfft. And it becomes extremely romantic. That is not the truth. The truth is you do it God's way, you never stop falling in love. And that standard of beauty is held. But now, because of this, I want to explain something. I said I was going to help you make sure that your relationships were bulletproof. Over the course of my time pastoring, I've had this experience many times where a man or a woman, a husband or a wife has come to me, and I'm just going to kind of roll them all together into kind of a statement. They all said things just a little bit different, but in essence, this is what they said. I believe that the Lord is calling me to leave my spouse for this other person. And I'd be like, I beg your pardon? Yeah, I really think that God wants me to leave my husband, to leave my wife for this other person. And I'd be thinking like, man, I missed that verse. No way. Where are you getting that from? And this is the way the explanation goes. Well, me and my spouse, things haven't been good between us, and we've been, arguing a lot, and you know how it's been, and we haven't been intimate for like ever. And it's like, okay. Well, but there's this man I met at the park. Well, there's this woman I met at work. And it goes something like this. The husband's at home, and he tells a joke to his wife, and she's just put off, and she doesn't laugh, and she's like, would you just get serious? We've got things to do. And he tells the same joke at work, and this woman at work just laughs. You are the funniest man. And her eyes sparkle, and he's like, whoa. She's been trying to talk to her husband, and she's trying to spend time with him, but he's too busy. He's always at work, never has any time for her. And then she's at a park one day, and here's a man, and they start talking, and he's just delighted with her. He's just like, I can't imagine. And so she decides to make him her confidant, telling her a bit of the problem she has at home. And he's like, I just can't understand how any man would not be just absolutely overwhelmed with you. And when I've heard these accounts, the first time I heard this account, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, something came out of my mouth. And I'd never heard it before. And it came out of my mouth before I could even really think it. So that I was just as surprised as the other person was when I said it. Have you ever had that happen? And so it was just like, yeah, I just believe that this is, and I'm like, you're transferring the glory. And he looks at me like this, like, what? And I kind of look at him like, what? And then all of a sudden, God just poof. It's like, yes. It says in the garden, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and he shall be joined to his wife, singular. And the two, not 3, 4, 5, the two shall become one flesh. God's design is that you love one. You see, we don't have a pantheistic God. We don't have 1,000 gods. We don't have 1,000 wives. We have one God, one Savior, one Lord, one Bible, one Word, one truth, one mate for all of our life, one. This is what we've been created for. We only have the capacity to love one. And God gives us this opportunity when we meet them, and the glory falls upon them, and we establish them as our standard of beauty, and we become enamored and in love with this one. And if we do not be careful, if we're not careful, and we don't maintain this relationship, and we allow another one to come in, we pull the glory off of our spouse, and we lay it upon this other person. And all of a sudden, our spouse looks kind of, nothing. We don't feel anything. We have no emotions. We feel all our emotions here. And that's what they come in, but I feel it. I know it's got to be God because I feel it. It's like, no, you're just being an idiot. take the glory and put it back on your spouse. And I will ask them, do you remember when you fell in love? Oh, yeah. Were you feeling the things you feel now? Yeah, but it's not like that. No, just shh. Listen, do you remember? Yes. Go home, look at your wife. Go home, look at your husband, and remember how you met and fall in love with your spouse. And I've had, and I believe that was from the Lord. And I believe that you should remember that. You should you should seal that in your memory. Because I've had people come back and go, wow, I fell in love again. Yes, because we can only love one. He says to her, you are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. He is establishing her as his standard of beauty. He is becoming, and if we follow God's plan, he will become addicted to her, she will become addicted to him, and if they don't ever transfer the glory, that relationship will stay romantic and hot and wonderful and intimate until they die. And he says, come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peaks of Amana, from the peak of Senir and of Hermon, from the dens of the lions and from the mountains of the leopards. He says, come away with me from all of that which was frightening. When you were out in the world, when you did not know, come to me and come to a safe place. This is different than what is being sold in the world right now. I am sure you've heard of this stupid movie, 50 Shades of Stupidity. 50 Shades of Evils, 50 Shades of Corruption. Let me give you the basics of it. And this is the part that I think you guys need to get woken up to really quick. This is the premise of the story. There's a man who's sexually abused when he's young and becomes perverted and corrupted. And so he in turn starts to corrupt others. He meets a virgin. It's his 6th or 7th victim. He meets a virgin and he corrupts her. And he abuses her through all forms of violent sex. The way that he was abused, he abuses her. And in the end, she determines that this relationship's not going to work, and she leaves all messed up. A new pervert in the world. Isn't that a lovely story? Gosh, we should make a movie about that. What are we thinking? And by the way, this is porn, and I'm not going to be so naive as to think that I don't have people here who have not been touched by porn. But I need you to understand something. That is a wicked corruption of God's intention. It is not what he's intended. It is violent. Now, this is what is so mind-boggling to me. This storyline, this plot line, which involves the sexual abuse of a woman, is extremely popular with women. How could that be? Because they don't know this. It says to anyone who is starving, every bitter thing seems sweet. When somebody doesn't know the truth, they're willing to believe a lie. He says, come away from that danger. Come away from that lie. Come away from that abuse. Come away from that harm. Come and be with me and be safe. And then he says, you have captivated, really he says, you have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. And that's a cool term, my sister, my bride. You're thinking, what, these rednecks? No, it's not like that. Because you kind of think like, that's kind of gross. But that's not what he's saying. When he says my sister, he's saying my friend. Because, when you have a sister, that's probably the closest you've been to any girl if you're a guy. Or if you have a brother, it's the closest you've been to most guys, right? And you know everything about each other, and you've spit milk out your nose with each other, and everything. You're close. And he says, you are close to me like that. You are my friend, my bride. And he says to her, you have captivated me. The word really in Hebrew means something hollow that is swelled to the point of bursting. He says, you've about exploded my heart. You have captivated me with one glance of your eyes. You have captivated me with one strand of your necklace. And so he's responsive to her. He notices when she looks, he notices what she wears, which, would make a lot of women mad. You don't notice what I wear, Solomon did, but, in our own defense, that's all she's wearing. So he noticed it, big whoop. It's the only thing she's got on, okay? So he noticed it. Anyway, he says, you're captivating me. You're ravishing my heart. You're exploding my heart. And then he says this, and this is going to be a mind blower because we're going to switch our paradigms in a minute. How much better is your love than wine? How much more the fragrance of your oils than any spice? How much better is your love than wine? Do you remember she said that to him? She said, my beloved, how much better is your love than wine? Now he's saying it to her. And remember, I said, this is not just a story of a man and a woman. This is a story of God and us. This is a story of our bridegroom, Jesus, and us. And we think about this. We think, oh man, I love Jesus. I love him so much. What he's done for me. He died on the cross and he paid for my sins and he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's so amazing. I am so overwhelmed with what he's done for me. I'm overwhelmed by Jesus. And we understand that. But have you ever thought that Jesus is overwhelmed by you? How the infinite is overwhelmed by you? This is the groom talking. He says, how much better is your love than wine, the fragrance of you than any spice? What he's saying is, how much more amazing is your love for me than any experience or anything I've created? The Lord is saying to us that we're more important than the galaxies, and we're more important than the stars. We're more important than the surf of the sea or the whales or anything else. He says the magnificence of earth is nothing compared to you. Your praises, because it says that our praise and our prayer goes up to him as incense into his nostrils, is a fragrance into his nose. He says your fragrance, it means more to me than anything I've created. I don't know that we know how to conceive of that. The infinite creator of the universe is overwhelmed with us. Our praise, when we were praising, he is impacted. It matters to him. It matters to him. So then, and then he's traveling. He hasn't touched her, but now he's going to. He says, your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Honey and milk are under your tongue. How does he know what it tastes like under her tongue? France didn't become a nation until the 9th century AD. This poem was written in the 10th century BC. So I don't know why we call it a French kiss, because 18 centuries before they're talking about it. It's not a French kiss, nothing. It's a Bible kiss. This is a Bible kiss. He says, honey and milk are under your tongue. He is kissing her. And he says, and the fragrance of your garments is better than any spice. And the term for garments, you're going, wait, I thought she was naked. She is. This word for garment means form. In fact, if you go back to its root, it means a statue. He says, your fragrance is more amazing than any. He's so close to her. He's smelling her. And remember, we said only recently has science caught up to the idea that we all have our own unique scent, that our pheromones that we produce are unique to us. He's saying you are more amazing than any scent. So he's kissing her. And then he says, a garden locked, he's still traveling. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A well locked, a fountain sealed. This term, garden, well, and fountain, is also a metaphor, and it's being used for her private reproductive area. Okay? Are you guys following? So he's still traveling. This is his wife, and he's experiencing her. And he says, you are a garden, a well, and a fountain locked. He says, you're a virgin. As he is exploring, he says, you are a virgin. And he is praising her for it. And I got a little bit of a bone to pick. Our society does not value virginity because we're idiots. There is nothing more precious than the gift that God has given in virginity. Because what is it saying? What he is saying is, as he's exploring, he goes, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're a virgin. You waited for me. You waited for me. I don't, what is he feeling? I wish I could tell you. I wasn't a Christian. Dorothy wasn't a Christian. I wish I could tell you. But I can tell you kind of. My future daughter-in-law, Christopher's getting married next Saturday. Not this Saturday, next Saturday. And we're talking with Kimberly. And she said, he's my first relationship. He's my first dating relationship. I was waiting for him. This girl rocks the planet. I don't know how you could bless me more. As I'm thinking, she waited for my son. She waited 29 years for my son. That blesses me. I can imagine when it blesses him. So can I tell you, if you're a virgin, hold on to it. You guard it with your life. It is a gift for your beloved. It is a gift that you can give to him or to her. Because virginity goes both ways here. You wait. Now, I know some of you are thinking you're feeling a little broken because you didn't wait. Start now. You know now. The Bible says that God values fidelity, faithfulness, perseverance, selflessness. It is for this reason that this man is, whoever knows, however old he is, he spent all this time just talking to her and blessing her because he has self-control. Because he has self-control. Virginity is a treasure. She is a virgin. And so he says, your shoots are a paradise of pomegranates with choicest fruits, henna and nard. He's now talking about her legs. The word for shoots means missiles, shoots, stalks. It's her legs. He says, your legs are like a paradise of pomegranates. Now, what he's saying here is not necessarily something that we would catch on to here with all its choice fruits, henna and nard. Pomegranates, you know what a pomegranate is. In this culture, pomegranates are very important because when you bust them open, it's just a bunch of little baby pomegranates in there. It's fertility. He says, you are fertile, which we're thinking like, well, that's kind of weird. But culturally, this is huge for her. It would be like, I guess, saying now to a woman, it's like, wow, you're really modern. You're really cosmopolitan. You're really, you're really professional. Okay, in Bible times, they go, say, what? Well, she's what? Right? Why would anybody care about that? Here he's going, you're fertile. And in that culture, that means something. And then he says, it's also sensual because, the seeds of the pomegranate, they're juicy and they're red and it's rich. And then he says, and they're of henna. Henna is a color. He says they're a beautiful color. And nard, he says, a beautiful fragrance. And then he goes on and it gets extremely erotic at this point. He says, your legs are a paradise of pomegranates with choicest fruits, henna and nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, and choice balsams. And at this point, if you read any of the Bible commentators, they all turn into botanists because this is kind of a racy verse. And so they're all like, and the genus and species of the, they're all getting kind of nervous. And so I'm not going to dig into this too much, but let me just give you some word associations with what he's saying. He's basically exploring his bride, and he's down there, and this is what he's saying about her. He says, you know what? You're everything, because you see, nard is fragrant, and saffron is a flavor, and calamus is something that you put into food, but it's actually poisonous, so it's dangerous. A little bit makes the food really unique. It's like a delicacy, but too much kills you. He's like, yeah, and you're dangerous. And your cinnamon, which is invigorating, and your frankincense, which is holy, and myrrh, which is surrendering, and aloes, which are healing, and balsams, which are sweet. As he's going through, he's like, you're everything. You're healing, and you're invigorating, and you're calming, and you're moving, and you're fragrant, and you're sweet, and you're. So basically, you could replace the whole verse with, wow. Okay, that's what he's saying. He's like, you're amazing. And now he says something. This verse is going to mirror the previous one. He says, a garden locked is my sister, my bride. A well locked, a fountain seal. Now he says to her, you are a garden fountain, a well of living water, a flowing stream of Lebanon. He mirrored that previous verse. And basically what's happening is she's yielding to him. And then she speaks. Awake, north wind, and come, south wind. Blow upon my garden. Let its spices flow. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat its choice fruits. Yeah, that's pretty. Okay. Awake, north wind. Come, south wind. She's calling the north wind. What's the north wind? The north wind is strong. It's cold. It's invigorating. What's the south wind? The south wind is warm and gentle and soothing. And she's basically saying, you're invigorating, you are soothing, you are the wind, you are, come, north wind. Right? She's essentially, this is, if I can just translate this, at this point, she's laying down. And she's saying, I'm yours. And then he is coming over her, and he's getting close to her, and then it fades to black. Like any good movie. You're saying, say, what? Wait a minute. Pastor Shaun, you lured me here with a lie. You were going to talk about excellence. Where is the technique? Where are all the techniques? I came for a how-to. Why is that not in here? Because you see, that's what the world says. It's all about your technique. The Bible says, what? Technique? You also notice when he's describing her, did you notice he didn't say anything about the size of the fawns? He didn't say how long those stalks were. He didn't go over any dimensions. There was no dimensional analysis here. But if you go out to the world, what is it telling you all the time? What is it shoving in your face all the time? That sex is about your physical dimensions, your physique and your technique. And that's what they think it's about. And this doesn't touch on it in anything. What God has said is what makes sex what it's supposed to be is faithful, committed, lifelong love. Fidelity, sacrifice, selfishness, selflessness. That is what makes your love life. So yeah, there's no how-to here. There's no Kama Sutra here. There's no perversion here, no pornography. There's no pornography here. This is just essentially, he has been telling her how beautiful she is. He has been adoring every part of her. He has been overwhelmed by her. He has been establishing her as his standard of beauty. And when he did this, he got overwhelmed and she got overwhelmed. So now I'm going to jump into the next for one more verse because the lights come back up. The lights come back up and the groom speaks. He says, I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride. What a cool line. My garden, my sister, my bride. Can I translate? My lover, my friend, my wife. Cool line, huh? I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh and my spice. I have ate my honeycomb with my honey. I have drank my wine with my milk. I don't know if you counted, there were 9 my's there. Solomon is done, and it's my. That's a lot of my's. He didn't say that before. He said her garden, her myrrh, her spice. Now he says mine. The relationship just changed. In the consummation of the marriage, they are now belong to each other. Paul explained this. He says, now husbands, your bodies are no longer for you, but they belong to your wife. Wives, your bodies are not for you, they belong to your husband. He says, she's mine. Can I tell you, Dorothy can be your teacher, she can be your friend, she can be your counselor, she can be your mentor, but she's my love. You see, I can be your pastor, I can be your teacher, I can be a counselor, I can be a friend, but I'm her love. We have an exclusivity in our relationship that is ours for life. It's ours. She's mine, I'm hers. That's in the natural. Check this out in the supernatural. It says that when Jesus comes, when he takes us, and his Spirit comes into us, he says, you're mine, and I am yours. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. That's also speaking to us about our relationship with our God. We become his, and he is ours. And then, all of a sudden, now remember, this is just Solomon and the Shulamite in their honeymoon room. 2 people in a room. When all of a sudden you hear, eat, friends, drink and be drunk with love. Now, would that not freak you out? Who is in the room? Who is saying this? God. God is saying, eat, friends, drink and be drunk, O lovers. God is saying, be drunk? Yes. Be intoxicated in this relationship. You know, I think that the world tries to sell a bum rap that God and the church are against sex. No, we are the most pro-sex organization on the planet. But we're pro-God's way. And so what happens is that they're making, he's in the room. God's in the room. And he's saying, eat and drink and be intoxicated. This is my gift to you. Imagine making somebody a cake and giving it to them, and they put it in a box, and they put it on the shelf. And you say, what are you doing? Well, I put it in this little glass box so I can look at it. I didn't make it for you. I made that so you'd eat it. Imagine buying your child a bike, and they just sit it in the corner, and they just look at it. You say, what are you doing? I'm looking at my bike. I didn't buy you a bike to look at it. I bought you a bike to ride. You see, if we give somebody something, we give it to them for the purpose that they should use it. And God says, I have given to marriage, to a husband and a wife, I have given you something, and it is called sex. And it is different than sex outside of marriage. Sex outside of marriage will never approach it. Never, never, never. If you have already blown your virginity because you thought it was something amazing, you may have had an experience, but it is not an intimate spiritual encounter with the love of your life. It's not the same thing. It was a physical thrill. There is a difference. God says, I've created this for my couples. Now, I'm going to blow your mind with this. Are you guys ready? There's a reason. He says, eat and drink and be intoxicated. Elsewhere in the Bible it says, do not be intoxicated with wine, but be ye filled with the Holy Spirit. Basically, be intoxicated with the Holy Spirit. Here he says, be intoxicated, O lovers. He's saying, he's calling up this parallel structure. And you're going to find there's several places in the Bible where God takes something on earth and he uses it as an example, as a hint, as a glimmer of what we're going to expect in heaven. So when we think of something on earth that's precious, we might think of gold. Gold as being a very precious metal. And he says, yes, gold is very precious on earth. In heaven, we pave the streets with it. It's like asphalt. Your gold is heaven's asphalt. And you say, well, but we have jewels and carbuncles and rubies and emeralds and diamonds. He's like, yes, those are awesome. We use those for cinder blocks in heaven. You see, that which is the most glorious here is just a hint. It is just a taste of what is base in heaven. And so that we can't even completely understand. But then what he says is he's saying, I want my married couple. He says, I've given you marriage because I've created you relational so that you might have a relationship with me. But until you are with me, I'm going to give you another relationship. I'm the bridegroom, you're the bride. I'm going to give you another relationship like that on earth. And I'm going to call it marriage. And it's a blood covenant. And it's for life. So this relationship is reflecting my relationship with you. And I'm going to give you something in that called sex. I'm going to give you an intimacy in that sex. And now, do you understand what you experienced there? Did you understand the warmth and the joy and the unity and the love and the exhilaration and the healing and the calming effect? Did you feel all that? Yes, Lord, I did. That's just a hint of what it's going to be like when you stand in my presence. Say, what? Yes. What you're experiencing here as the epitome of closeness and unity is a hint of what you're going to experience with me. That's why it says there is no marriage in heaven. Because it's eclipsed. The relationship gets eclipsed And we sometimes get a little upset about that idea because we get pretty used to what we have down here. My grandmother used to argue with me on this one all the time. I don't care what that says. Daddy and I are going to be together in heaven. She loved him so much. They met, she was 16 and he was 19, and they got married and until she died when she was 90, and he continued to love her for 12 more years until he died. Or maybe she was 80 and 12 more years. Anyway, he died at 98 or something. Anyway, they loved each other. They were like really, that's the relationship I want. My grandparents' relationship's the one I want. They were crazy, madly, intimately in love with each other. When they were old, I'm talking like old, older than me old. My grandfather would just look at her and he said, she's got more sex appeal in her little finger than other women have in their entire bodies. Which is a weird thing to hear from your grandfather. She would nudge me and say, is he not just the sexiest man you have ever seen? What do you say to that? Say, Grandma, did you see this magazine? What do you say? They were passionately in love because they did this. But it's eclipsed in the presence of God. I'm going to give you a way for you to understand this. In the womb, imagine the baby saying, I don't want to leave here. Listen to what I get to listen to. Listen to this. Doom, 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 doom. And wait, shh, listen. You hear that? You hear that lyrical? Yeah, that's music. Yeah, I get to hear that here. I don't want to leave here. But you don't understand. You're hearing it muffled through the womb. When you're born, you're going to hear violins and crashing waves, and you're going to hear flutes and bass drums. You're only hearing such a little piece of what you're going to hear. Oh, but I can't leave because did you see that right there? Did you see that little that glimpse? Yeah, that was light reflected through the wall of the womb. Yeah, why would I leave that? Because it's going to get eclipsed. There's not enough light in here to see color. You're going to see things. I can't even explain them to you. And you see, our life here compared to heaven is like being in the womb. And what God has said is, your bodies are not capable of experiencing what I have for you in heaven. You would be destroyed. So I will give you the promise, and then I will give you a hint. Gold and jewels and sexual intimacy and marriage are hints of what is to come. This is what I've created you for. Now be faithful. So I just want to give that to you guys. This is the wedding night. And I hope you took notes. Because you see, you wait. And when you meet the one, you forsake every other person on the planet for him or for her. You put everything on the line. And then you get married. And then you make your husband or your wife your standard of beauty for the rest of your life. And you keep the glory on that one. And you will have the most rocking, fulfilling, unending, renewing relationship that you can ever have on this planet. And it will be a sign to all of them that they're wrong, that 50 Shades of Grey is perverse, that human trafficking is perverse, that pornography is perverse, that prostitution is perverse, that rape is perverse. And that was not what God intended. This is what God intended. And it's better, and it's healing, and it works. And when we stay faithful to that, we go from glory to glory. And what we experience here is just a taste of that which is to come. That's God's design.
This has been a study for Pierce Youth Group, Calvary Chapel, Rio Grande Valley. For more information about our ministry, you can visit us online at ccrgv.com.